Right. So hello, and welcome. I'm sitting here with Miss Robyn Spicer, who's been a member of the Metaphysical Club. And since it was Discover, like 3.5 years now, it's been a beautiful unfolding of the relationship and cosmic exploration. And so as we are sitting here during our Metaphysical Club class time, decided to hit the recording and share in the discussion because I think it might be beneficial to those who are listening. So I'm Sitara Fe, ranked top 5 female psychic medium in the United States by the American Federation of Certified Psychics and Mediums, the creator and founder of Monad and Monad Society, as well as now Cosmic Bloom. So with that, Robyn and I were just diving into a rich discussion about food, how we feel with food resonance, the vibration on the planet, and she was just getting fired up to talk about the Schumann resonance. So I want to just pick up right where we were, but I also want to share a little bit about Schumann resonance because I don't think that is common knowledge. So Robyn, do you want to explain it, or should I explain it before you jump in?
Great.
Okay. So the Schumann resonance is a measurement of the vibrational frequency on the planet. The baseline of the frequency of Earth is 7.83 hertz. Now, I have an app on my phone that is the Schumann resonance app, we'll just say, that vibrates at that frequency. And so when I'm feeling ungrounded or maybe even a little bit anxious, I actually will go and just listen to that and tune in and meditate to help calm my nervous system, drop me into the frequency of Earth, and just, remind me of grounding in that way. Sometimes it's very helpful. Now, the Schumann resonance has been in the last couple of years having extraordinary spikes where the resonance of the planet is going over even 100 hertz, which if we think the baseline is 7.83, for it to spike over 100 hertz, that's where we have major symptoms of dizziness, fatigue, emotional roller coasters, shadow work. It's like these things that come up. And some people want to attribute it to the astrological signs or where the planets are. Sometimes it's solar flares that come from solar storms on the sun that then throw magnetic waves to the planet. All sorts of different things. But yeah, Robyn, you were just dropping in about the Schumann resonance and how that's been going for you. And I'd love to hear a little bit more.
It's been spiking, and it's like, okay, so I know many people that are getting vertigo-like symptoms. Okay, because it's like, okay, so you got the Earth frequency rising, and then you got all this energetics going on in the sky. The planetary alignments are shifting. The sun flares, there's definitely been a couple of them. So you got all this energy moving around us constantly. And it's almost like we're in a pressure cooker, and then the valve releases, and then it's like, okay, I can breathe for the day. And then the next day it starts again. And this is the type of, and that's what it feels like this past week, 2 weeks, but there's a natural release of the pressure, that it levels you back down and go, okay, this is better. I can do this. And then it builds again. And, with the planetary alignments, and I'm not really specific at which ones, we got Venus that just went retrograde. We got Mercury going retrograde. There's so much happening energetically. And then you got the Earth frequency spiking. And it's like, wow, talk about overload.
Yeah, I keep going, I'm so tired, something's wrong, woe is me. And then I pop my head out of that little pity party or whatever cycle I'm on, and I go, oh, no wonder I'm tired.
Yeah,
the collective, the planet, the frequencies, the la
because we weren't taught all these external energies affect us. It's, well, if you don't feel well, it's on you, or it's the food you eat, or it's this, or it's what you're reading or watching, and all that attributes to it. But when you think about it, the natural energy of our environment is what is going to give us these natural ups and downs. But to say, I went through this the other day, it's like, oh my God, what is going on with me? I can't do this anymore. And it's like, it's not you. You need to go find out what it is, because it's not you. Well, if I didn't have that gauge inside me going, it's not you, then I would have just melted into my sofa going, oh, it's me. I don't feel like I'm not doing, I become a victim of the
Yeah.
energy. It's interesting how this is really playing out lately, you know.
I agree. And I like that you said that, because I actually have a friend. I was just chatting with her earlier today, and she was in Tulum, she was in Costa Rica. I met her from Bali. And then she just recently flew to LA, and I saw in her Instagram stories, and she was saying, I feel good, but LA, you don't feel good. LA, why don't you feel good? Because I feel good and I'm here in LA, but you don't feel good. And it's affecting me. Like, I'm not feeling good because you don't feel good. And it was a really funny way to put it. But also, we just spoke about Share the Prophecy, and I am going to talk about that here. Sharetheprophecy.com. If you haven't seen it yet, it's an anonymous read that a woman who is a psychic and has been a psychic medium for over 20 years, practicing doing readings, that sort of thing, along with my line of work. Somebody shared it with me. Like I said, it's an anonymous read. I listened to it, and it really put a lot of things into perspective. But she talks about that too, of like what's going on in the collective field, and where people's energies are getting like stuck in the field that's there, but not knowing how to discern what's their energy and what isn't their energy, and how to unplug from what we might call the matrix, or unplug from the programming, or unplug from the collective field. Because we are all one and all that, we don't have to participate in the collective chaos. We don't have to participate in the collective fear programming, like the underlying currencies that are there. There's a conscious or subconscious choice that a lot of people don't know they're making to plug into that, because it's part of our programming. And so when we start to become aware of it, and we start to see that, okay, like you're saying, well, this isn't me. There's something going on, but it isn't me. I'm feeling the ripple effects of what's happening. And I think there's two things that are going on with that, is that there's the collective, like we're saying, the lower frequency that's like, okay, the collective, this is where we feel sad or bogged down or in grief. And I definitely go through my own waves of it. I had a couple days ago, like sitting on the beach, just, we're never getting back to normal. What we knew life to be is never coming back. It is never coming back. So the more we can get into a place of acceptance that we're never going back, that we are only moving forward, and we're all moving forward with this giant fucking pandemic stain. This is a stain. Like, I was thinking about this the other day too, like the trauma that's actually taken place in the psychology of so many humans from this experience, that has disrupted what they thought life was, like what was stable to be. And now it isn't. But the psychological trauma that's happened for so many people that don't have the resources or tools or connections to understanding these things, or these parts of our free will choices to unplug. So I was like, wow, really reflecting on a lot of that and going, okay, like we got some cleanup to do. We got some things to do. There's some structure in place. And I really believe, using myself as an example, I'm 33, I'm not married, I don't have kids, I have the life experiences that I've had, I feel, to shape me to be a person that can be in the leading edge during this time of bringing people into union with themselves, into the sacred union with themselves, to continue to be leading edge for the people that they are then there to help support and teach and nurture into the unplugging. Because the unplugging process is not pretty. The deprogramming process is not pretty when we have to detox from that. Now, the other side to the two is that we have our light body integrating with our physical form, that's changing our DNA our cellular memory, and our biological and physiological composition. And that also doesn't always feel good. It doesn't always feel euphoric and exciting, and you're like, yay, I'm in the space. It does. We have those peak experiences, but then in the integration, we'll say like the warm liquid goo phase for those that are Austin Powers fans. It's like that phase where our physical bodies are up leveling, our DNA is changing to a different energetic composition. This is Bobby Gouling. A different energetic composition that our bodies then have to re-assimilate to. And so it's like there's different layers of discernment when you're sitting on the couch, or I say when I'm face down on my pillow, can't get out of bed, not because I'm depressed, but because I'm like feeling all of these things happening and my body needs to chill. It's like a computer. When your computer is downloading or uploading, it doesn't have a lot of room to do a bunch of other stuff. So it slows the whole system down. And that's essentially what happens with our bodies. So there's the upgrades that will slow us down. And then there's the discerning, are we feeling the lower frequencies of the collective that are slowing us down? And how do we use our free will? And I think that's really where it comes to mastering our discernment and mastering our energy, which I know you have a ton of experience in doing.
So I think that's it. No matter what we're going through, if it's okay, so we're empathic. What do you do with the collective energy as an empathic? Well, the old school empaths take it on, transmute it, and then clear it and put it back out, right? What if we're not supposed to do that anymore? What if we're supposed to just see the energy and not take it on? Okay. And just bless it, love it, send it the power energy of our heart, just as we have to do to our own body. Like when you're face down on the pillow. Okay.
Yeah.
The key to getting off that pillow is self-love. Right? So what I've learned in the last, honestly, it's God. It's like love is the frequency of love is our answer to everything. No matter
I 1000% agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, when I know my body is going, I don't like what's going on, and I want to disconnect, it's like, okay, so I'm connecting into the heart space, into the love, and just running that frequency of love through my being until I'm going, okay, I can do this now. I rejuvenated myself and cleared out what wasn't mine. As an empath, we took it on. We don't have to anymore. And that is like the biggest thing I keep telling myself every day. I don't have to take any of it on. I can watch it and love it as it goes by. I don't have to take it on to transmute it. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you on that completely. And I love this perspective because I also have a bit of my own personal connection to what you're saying with my name. So Samantha is obviously the female version of Samuel, which is a Hebrew name, both in alignment or association with listener of God or good listener. Good listener, I'd say is the easy translation, but ultimately means listener of God. And so when I found that out when I was little, I was like, oh, Chatty Cathy, a little bit of a class clown, sort of like, give me all your attention so I can make you laugh kind of little kid. And so when I heard good listener, I'm like, haha, that's hilarious. And then of course I got into psychology and started doing the channeling, and then really accepted my gifts, and even more came through. And then when Sitara came through, when I started speaking the light language, and I sat with that for about 10 minutes before I knew that it was time for me to start going by that name. One of the things that was the big difference is that Sitara or Samantha, channel listener, it's like receiving information in this way. But Sitara means morning star. And it also means a few other things, but the Sanskrit definition is morning star. And so when I learned that, I saw that my energy was shifting from being like a channel in that way and receiving, you know, the feedback of energy as an empath to being a beacon of light and having like fortifying the strength in my own heart space to be able to radiate and emanate in a room. That if I walk into a room, I'm not there to match the energy, which is what a codependent empath does.
Yes.
You walk into the room, you read the energy, you feel it, and then you match it. But that's not what developed empaths do. And this is why I have a passion for helping people, especially people. I really believe that a lot of empaths and wildly gifted human beings are the ones that are most prone to alcoholism, drug addiction, any form of numbing because of how intense this world can be. And without having the skills, accountability, group, being able to talk about it, it's very, very, very challenging to hold the weight of the intensity of what comes through when you're a sensitive being. And so instead of being thicker skinned or dissociating, we go numb. And so that's where I have a lot of compassion for that, because it was also a lot of my own journey. It was like, how do I make this go away? How do I turn it off? How do I just like, I cannot handle it. And the people in my world, this was me being in high school, like just didn't know. I love my parents. I feel like they did a great job. Ish, you know, not everyone has a clear report card with children in high school. It's fine. We all make it through, right? But at the same time, like I didn't even know how to communicate what I needed, let alone they didn't know how to participate with me in the way that offered that support. And that's where and why, that's a lot of the drive of the passion that I have to bringing that education, like you're saying, to being aware of the empathizing with the energy and instead being a beacon. And that's where working with Kuan Yin as a key code mentor, as I learned through the Sophia code and other teachings, is that the frequency of compassion, truly the frequency of compassion, it's the strongest field, it's the strongest energetic current that we know that is in association with understanding another being. Love is love, and love can be felt, and love is strong, and love is not a Hallmark card. Compassion in the association with whatever it is that's going on with another being will transmute, like you're saying, it'll just transmute and shift the frequency on contact. The other frequencies or the other energy or the other emotion, it just has no chance to withstand pure compassion. But pure compassion has to be embodied for it to be able to be effective. You can have the idea of compassion, but in that case, it's just an idea. You can have the idea of forgiveness, but until you've embodied the forgiveness, until you've embodied the compassion, it actually it's not as effective. It can be there, but it's maybe, you know, like a washable marker. It shows up and then it goes away. It's nice for a fleeting moment, but if we want lasting, permanent shift, to be able to be the person that evoked that, in my perspective and experience, it requires us to embody it first to be able to be that ripple effect.
Yes.
And you're a queen at that, by the way. You are an absolute queen at that. And the way that I have felt what I just described from you to me in times when I've gone like, woo, and you're like, okay, come back, lady. And you've had your woo, and I'm like, okay, we got this. We know how to give and receive this experience. It's beautiful.
But you know, when you think about what's happening in the collective, so many are taking the energy on. And trying to identify it as it's mine. It like I got a stomach ache or I got a leg cramp, so it must be mine. And that's where I'm literally like, I literally just see if we as a collective do not take the energy on that's a lower frequency, as you said. Be the beacon of light. Okay. Empaths are taught that when you go into a room, you, like you said, you match the energy and then you transmute it out. Like you raise the frequency and transmute it out. We don't have to take it on to transmute it into a higher frequency. But how many people can comprehend that in this moment, in the collective, that like it's a simple concept, but you're breaking a pattern of programming that as an empath, and we know like you have your Facebook group, how many empaths are on that group? How many have been taught the same thing that we take it on to transmute it out to a different frequency?
Yeah. Well, right now the Facebook group is being banned. So at this point,
I'm
none.
sorry. Okay.
Yeah, thanks for bringing it up.
Like, okay.
At this point, I saw it and I'm like, you know what? I've had a very strong reaction to seeing this message before, and this time I saw it and I'm like, I'm over it. It's like, what can I keep doing? But I hear what you're saying, and I bring that up not to be like, woe is me, but it is to be aware of what is taking place with the access to information that we have that is supporting what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I think the understanding why that's taking place for myself and other leaders in the conscious development, and why we are feeling the need to go to other platforms like Telegram or Discord, or finding groups that like creating things that are not on these big companies that are being monitored, is shenanigans.
Yes.
All I'm going to say, it's shenanigans. And I do not want to get into the minutia, and I do not want to give the energy of what I believe is taking place, because I want to focus on what I'm creating to be able to host a place where we can safely discuss the things that we want to discuss in unification.
Building
to me, yeah. And well, I've heard that term a lot being on Bali, and a lot of I really believe a lot of people that are on Bali during this time are leading edge, and there are other hot spots where there are groups of people that are leading edge of consciousness. They say that only 2% of the population is awake, which
that's better
it's
than
not
none,
much,
but okay.
It's better than none. It's better than none. But that to me is also a signifier that we're at the beginning. The generations that came through that were awake in the 80s, they were at the beginning. A lot of really powerful spiritual teachings started coming through in the 80s. There was another wave through the 90s. And then there's been waves, there's generations, right, that come through to pave the way for us to be able to exist in this world, protected, only seen by those with eyes to see and ears to hear. That I know that I am genuinely invisible to people that are, one, can't see me, don't believe for themselves, but also wish me harm. I am invisible. They literally cannot see me. I've experienced this before, and I was in a different mind space and a different place in my own healing experience. And I chalked it up as the man-woman thing. That if I was a man, they would have looked at me or respected me differently or listened to me differently, which I also do know and believe is valid. And simultaneously, once I got out of that and started doing my own healing and re-reflected on that, I was like, oh, there was a different component going on there. I was actually protected because I also knew that these people's energy was not, one, definitely not in alignment with my own highest good or the highest good of all. Right. And so we are here, we are protected. I've spoken a lot more about it in the Conscious Starseeds video, which if you're having a baby or wanting to have a baby, it's great. But also if you're not, and you're just aware that there's a protected stream of conscious energy on this planet, no matter where you are. And I think I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but obviously it feels very important to we have to know that we're safe. And so many of us that are wizards and have magical inclinations and are sensitive beings, if you don't resonate with any of those things, or you're just highly emotional, like, let's just take it to the base. You're a highly emotional person. The chances of you being highly sensitive and highly gifted and potentially a medium are also very, very high. If that's the case, the potential for you to have had lifetimes where you have been a witch or a gypsy or a soothsayer or a fortune teller or a fill in the blank of these magical beings that have been completely, I don't even know how to describe it. We'll say the reputation has been stained by naysayers who may be acting from a place of envy or jealousy or whatever it be. We have scars from being harmed in other lifetimes where our gifts have actually not been something that has protected our physical bodies. And so that trauma is stored in the memory of our soul. So that's why when we go into the classes, especially in the Metaphysical Club or the more advanced courses, and we talk about activating the soul memories, and we start to find that inside highly emotional people, or just people that are just slightly even more emotional, but just sensitive to the world environment, that those lifetimes will start to come up. And that's where the doubt and the skepticism and the fear, I don't know if I'm safe. If I develop this, am I safe? If I develop this, am I going to be ostracized from my community? It doesn't always have to be death, but am I going to be ostracized? Am I no longer going to fit in? Yeah, I definitely
Atlantis, a lot of us that are old souls, let's just call them old souls, we have memories of Atlantis in our cellular being, in our soul being, that we carry with. And knowing how the fall of Atlantis has affected us all, yeah, it might have been at a higher frequency than we're at right now, like where the Earth is right now. It existed, they say, on what, fourth dimension. So it was a little bit higher, but there was still a lot of controversy, power struggles, destruction of individuals. If they got too big for their britches, they got ostracized, or, you know, what's happening in the world today actually happened towards the end of the fall of Atlantis. So when you think of it that way, and we reincarnate, you know, we do carry that memory of the fall of Atlantis. And that's like, when you think about that, because most of the old souls have been there, that and Lemuria. So yeah, interesting.
So I want to just playfully ask you a question to push the envelope on that a bit. What are your musings or beliefs around those experiences happening now simultaneously?
That on one timeline that Atlantis is still happening and we're here, and I say absolutely.
And that our soul still has a feedback, our omnipresent soul has a feedback loop that's going on from that time period and place into what is also going on now within us.
Absolutely.
So that's what I've been experiencing. And like I said, when I'm saying I'm face down on the pillow, it's that my physical body needs to chill so that my mind can be in silence and receive. I have an aversion to the word downloads because it sounds so new agey. But essentially, it is what it is.
Right.
We'll say information incoming.
But it doesn't just have to be Atlantis. It could be any parallel timeline.
So that's what I was just gonna say. And I know that I know that
priestess in the Mayan, and like, yeah. So it doesn't have to be just Atlantis or Lemuria. It could be all of them. I don't think we're just, if we only use 10% of our brain and we're so freaking exhausted, what's happening to the rest of the brain? Where is it being used?
Who's measuring how much percentage of our heart we're using?
That's none of them. That's not
No,
important.
nobody's measuring that.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe I think Joe Dispenza has been talking a little bit more about the heart brain coherence. But from what I've been able to tell for years is that the consciousness of our heart goes far beyond the capabilities and consciousness of our mind. And when we are closed off to our heart, we're not able to experience all of that. So when I talk about like the accessing soul memories, it is about healing the heart, doing the shadow work, forgiving your mother, forgiving the ex, whatever it is that whoever needs to be forgiven, embodying that forgiveness so that the consciousness of the heart can actually open up. Because, and this is what I've been experiencing in these integration periods, is that I'm there's an awareness that I am, let's say, reconciling experiences that I have had from, let's say, Salem witch trials as an example, Atlantis as an example, dragon lineages where I have been a dragon, because that DNA inside of my body is activating so strong lately. I'm even noticing that that ripple effect is happening to the friends that are around me that are open to it, that are saying, okay, yes, I'm right. Yes, maybe let me explore this. And as that yes, maybe happens and they're going, I want to explore it. They're going, like last night, I literally had a conversation. My friend was just like, there was a dragon that came right in front of me. And I was like, uh-huh. And then what happened? Tell me everything.
Yeah.
That it's all of these timelines are reconciling. And when I say reconciling, I mean, like, I had some traumatic experiences in my younger years. In order for me to grow up into being a mature adult that can have more mature relationships and to be an effective business owner and entrepreneur in the way that I want to be, I have to heal that emotional body. Well, in healing that emotional body, I go back and actually on the first episode of the podcast is shifting memories from the past. I actually uploaded that specific transmission, that specific meditation, because it's so powerful that when we go into that and we reconcile that in this lifetime, but then we get to the point where we've done the work for this lifetime. So our egoic mind has let go of its defenses in such a way that the heart coherence can now start reconciling the timelines from Atlantis, from Lemuria, from lifetimes on other planets, that is activating the DNA inside of us simultaneously. So in the same way that I can go back and shift memories from the past, meaning my present time self can go back into that timeline, meaning at that point, my future self is there helping me. I'm experiencing my future self as my higher self or as my guide, sometimes embodied as Mother Mary, sometimes as Kuan Yin, sometimes as a dragon. It's all of these guides that we have. They are aspects of the entirety of our being. And so those experiences that are reconciling and activating the DNA inside of my own physical body, inside of your own physical body, is, from my perspective, what I believe the embodiment of the new earth to be. So we're not building the new earth. We're not constructing anything at all. We're actually embodying, we're assimilating to the frequency of what already exists. The new earth is already here. The new, and I don't even necessarily like the term the new earth. And some people get triggered by 5D. And use whatever vocabulary term, vernacular you want to say.
We know it's not going back to what it was.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
We need to embrace what the collective has talked about. There's not enough love, right? And you've heard it where you go over the last 10 years. Like, people are kind, they're inconsiderate, they're rude, they're this. Well, if we get back into our heart space and just send love out and be tolerant, and I'm not saying be tolerant to anything harmful, but just be present and allow things to flow around. If we all did that, that
Mm-hmm.
mindset of stepping into the heart space, that is creating a new vibration for the future. Our
Yeah.
children, our grandchildren will learn that, you know, instead of what they're learning and have learned. Well, it's me. I'm going to have a temper tantrum until I get what I want. Well, that's not from the heart. So if we all get back into our heart space and
It could
resonate,
be from a past life. You never
it
know.
could be, yes, it could
They
be from
could be
that.
having a flare up from a memory that they can't describe in words. And we're just like, what's going on? I don't know. Let them cry it out.
Right.
Like, who knows?
Exactly. But you know, it's interesting that it all comes back to the love and the heart space and the frequency of oneness within yourself and emulating that out. You
Mm-hmm.
know, you don't need the religion, you don't need any mantra, just like, you know, early on in the conversation, you had said that the pandemic brought in a lot of trauma. The pandemic also brought us back into our hearts because it put us into our homes to quiet us. So maybe that is the big shift that we really needed to, like, a lot of people I know went, wow, that shutdown it wasn't bad. I actually enjoyed being home. I got to work on my house and I got time for me because I wasn't out running around and doing 1,000 things. You know, we're overloaded as a society going, well, if I don't work, if I don't run from 8 o'clock in the morning until 9 o'clock at night, I'm just not doing what I'm supposed to do.
And if you sit for 5 minutes, you're lazy.
Exactly.
Like
So
that
that
self
pattern,
punishment that comes in is that I think is actually a very easy and graspable understanding of how societal programming grips us. To sit for 5 minutes, and especially as like a mom, let's just shout out to the moms for a minute.
mom,
Like, to
yes.
sit for 5 minutes because what you have toys all over the floor or whatever makes you lazy. This is not true. This is not what is the truth. It's how society has programmed us to think about ourselves, and that if we're not hustling and busy and grinding and stressed, then we're a failure.
Yes.
It's like, no,
This
that's
is
not true.
this is what we're shifting. This is what we're shifting. The
Yes.
programming, and that shutdown assisted in the shifting of the program. If the powers to be, I don't care how you word it, but they didn't realize that we all took a deep breath during that because we literally went, wow, I got a life.
Yeah.
You know, but it doesn't have to be outside. It doesn't have to, yes, I miss doing this and I miss doing that. But wow, it's so nice just to have my kids and my husband home with, and I can make a nice dinner and we're doing family things within our home.
Yeah.
You know, and that in itself, taking it back to family, to the home, is so nurturing, you know, and that's where we're all going back to, that heart nurturing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
So yeah.
I agree. I'm just contemplating if I want to go on a rant about how society programs us to be away from our heart. And it's like how I'll just touch on it gently. It's how normal it is to use people, how normal it is to drink alcohol, how normal it is to distract ourselves. And actually, the hustle and the grind and all of that, it keeps us so in our head that we're actually not paying attention to our heart coherence. And when the mind and the heart are not in alignment, that's when the anxiety takes place. And we think anxiousness or anxiety is something, external or whatever, but it's if the heart and the mind are not in alignment, and that the heart and mind alignment is actually then governing the actions, then we get really far off from what we want to be able to do for ourselves from a soul level. And when the soul is screaming at us through anxiety or through like the feeling of anxiousness or fear, it's really telling us to slow down and stop and listen.
Mm-hmm.
Anxiety is an alarm bell that's saying, listen, 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 listen. And most people don't want to lean into the anxiety or lean into the pain or lean into the signals that are taking place that are saying, hey, there's a coherence here for you to pay attention to. It's important.
No, society wants to put a Band-Aid on that anxiety with, oh, well, you got something emotionally wrong with you. So we're going to give you pills to squash the anxiety so you can function.
Mm-hmm.
That's the answer to anxiety. Let's just pop a couple pills and go see a doctor and work through therapy. But here's the pills. Don't forget to take the pills.
Well, and the stigma on the therapy, or if you're getting help, or I've had a few clients that are firefighters, and I've had a lot of conversations actually with firefighters because it's such a macho industry.
Mm-hmm.
But first responders are literally the people who are cleaning up the messes of car accidents and the things and the visions that they actually have to see and also clean up.
Mm-hmm.
And then if they, because it's super macho, have a desire to see somebody or seek help. And some that I've talked to have said, well, they took the anger out on their family, or they unconsciously were just lashing out at others, but they didn't necessarily like know that what was happening was that the trauma of the visions that they were seeing, that they were hardwired, hard programmed to be stoic in these experiences, not cry, not feel, just pick up. It's super sad. Watch families like break apart through death. That is not easy. Like there's no need to undervalue or placate the intensity of these experiences and the effect they have on each of our hearts, no matter if that's your soul calling or not. And I do believe that some people are wired in a different way, that they are more inclined to be able to handle that effectively than others. I do believe that we have different personalities and programmings, like we all have our own lane and our own job. And simultaneously, the stigma that's in the field of the firefighting support, it's really, really, really shamed. Yes. It's really shamed to be connected with your emotions, but you're expected to deal with these types of life events. I think that's a really...
Like military is also.
Yeah, it's a really extreme example, but I think it holds. Like if we use that as an extreme example and go, what else are we not allowed to feel by societal standards that we're expected to just numb and deal with and like move forward in life and not necessarily handle? But that's what brings us out of coherence with our heart. It's what doesn't allow us to embody the compassion that we're talking about. It doesn't allow us or encourage us to embody the forgiveness that we're talking about, and a different level. Like I call wisdom like spiritual maturity. When we grow spiritually wise, we are embodying our wisdom that knows how to handle emotions differently and knows how to, we say manipulate energy, but knows how to work with energy and knows how energy works. We cannot do that if we are disconnected from our emotions. Right. Emotions and feelings are the gateway to being able to understand that. But if we're shut down and our heart is shut down, there's numb, there's stoic, there's brick walls.
So when you speak of the firefighters, they don't have the ability to go into their superior to say, hey, I need assistance. This was a little too much for me, without the stigma affecting their future with that company, right?
Their reputation. Let's say their reputation inside the firehouse. Yeah. Because if they go to their chief and they're like, I need help with this, or the person that is in the particular conversations that I've had, which was not like widespread sort of thing. So I'm like, I'd love to hear from some firefighters if they're listening to this.
Absolutely.
But that they would be able to go to a chancellor And the chancellor was a person that, let's say, was like almost like going to a chapel in a hospital.
Okay.
Like it's a person that's dedicated to participate in that way by means of like the bridge to God sort of thing. It's like, this is who you have. And yes, I think there was also maybe like designated psychologists that were able to support. And I don't know the specifics of how that was included in their benefits, or if that was something that was encouraged.
Would that all be off the record? Would that be confidential or like military?
Well, the conversations would be confidential, obviously. Okay. But if they were to go see them, I think there's semantics there.
Yeah.
I don't think that the chief is going to come out of the office and be like, Bozo needs some help over here, whatever. And then he's slandered for needing that help.
Yeah.
But it's also it's also if they were to ask for help and then want to talk about what they're receiving for help, and knowing that some of their other coworkers need help because their dark sense of humor, or let's say their drinking habits outside of the firehouse have gone to an all-time high, and they're not dealing with the emotions properly, but they can see it. Like it's a very interesting world to navigate through, especially when you have a hardened male ego and expectation for machismo. And if you feel emotions, then you're, let's say, just less than. I'm not going to use the derogatory terms because I don't think that they fit properly as a female into what that means.
I want to ask you a question. Do you think the children, the boys especially, are being taught that it's okay to have emotions?
No.
Yeah. Okay.
No, and that's why I feel for men so much, and why I feel that women have a challenging time finding an emotionally sensitive man, or a man that is connected to their emotions. And it's because, and I'm just going to speak for the Western world, and I'm talking West Coast United States. I think the East Coast is even harder in this. I think there are different places where like the cultural is a little bit rougher. And I think it is, I want to believe that it's getting better, but I also don't know. It's that like little boys being told not to cry. It blows my mind. It blows my mind. Like I'm honored when a man tears up in front of me. And I will be honest, I still have, if I'm talking to a man and let's say it's the first like 4 or 5 times I've met him and he starts bawling based on something that's gone on or something, like, yeah, I still have a little bit of like, does this person have control of their emotions? And maybe same is true for me. If like somebody meets me and I start bawling, it's like, do they have control of their emotions? So we have to like find, like, I think it's important to find safe spaces where we have that. But if the deeper subconscious programming is saying men can't feel, and it's not like, that's why there are movements that are teaching men to cry and that it's okay to cry. I had one client that came to me. He had not cried in over, I think it was like 50 years, had not cried. And he came into my office and he bawled his eyes out. I've never actually seen anybody cry in the way that I saw him cry for the entire 90 minutes. Just sobbed and sobbed and sobbed. And I kept moving energy around and filled the room with love. And it was just like, wow.
That's beautiful though. But moving forward in the collective, in from what we're experiencing now, we should all be allowed to embrace our emotions without stigma. Like there should be no stigma on emotions, and yet that is like one of the hardest hit emotions of, like, think about it. They put you on medicine if they think you're too emotional, or if they think, like, there's just so much around emotion, and emotion is from the heart space, or the combination of moving things through pain or anxiety, okay, that you just keep storing up. Like, who said it's not okay to have emotions?
I don't know. It might have been the same women or the same people that were burning women at the stake.
Could be.
Could be. I think it's an interesting thing when we think of like, why were we so focused on the witches that needed to be burned rather than the people that were actually burning the witches?
Right. I was actually drowned.
I've been so
I
many
was
things. I feel
literally,
like I've got some sort of Salem thing going on because I've
yeah.
been talking about that more than I have, I think, ever. Just in
So
case.
I was in a healing session with a shaman, and it was one of the very first healing sessions I've ever done. And we were moving energy through my legs because of the nerve disorder. And he literally says, "Excuse me," and he starts gagging. And like, and he's describing this, and I actually felt like I was strapped to something. And he's describing that I was literally put into a wooden chair, strapped to the chair, and literally flipped upside down into a vat of water. And like this man that was doing the healing work on me literally went in the bathroom and like spewing water out of his lungs. And like I could feel the memory. He relived it, but I could feel it. And he says, "I never had an experience like that before. That I was seeing what happened to you and feeling it." He says, "Robyn, I literally went in and got water out of my lungs." He said, "Normally that's your job." He said, "But I took it on." And it was so bizarre. He said, "Yeah," he says, "You definitely have claustrophobia. You got like all these," and I do. I'm very claustrophobic. And don't make me stay in one spot. I can't do it. I gotta move. Like, and it's all part of that being strapped down. Can't do it. It's funny how things like that trigger. Yeah. You didn't know that.
I didn't know what.
That I was drowned as a witch.
I've been drowned. I've
Yeah.
actually experienced similar things and similar memories for sure. But yeah, I didn't know that specific memory you had experienced. No, I didn't know that. But I do know that our past life experiences of how we die definitely do carry on with us, which is also why the reconciliation of the soul memories I find to be so important in dealing with things like you're saying, like irrational fears of flying or irrational fears of drowning. If these things have never happened in this lifetime, why is the claustrophobia, or why is the germophobia, or why are these things? Like when I was younger, I had horrible, like 10 out of 10 fear of needles. I did not want to get any sort of shots at all. I actually got chicken pox, I think 2 or 3 times when I was younger. So I never had to get chicken pox vaccinations. Like there were quite a few things that I didn't have to get. But even when I was younger, like some would say I had an irrational fear about it. And when I started learning about past lives and these things that would come up, there was curiosity for me, like, was that a way that I was maybe executed in another lifetime? And or now with what's going on, is that also just simply because I knew that there was an intuitive, like, not really into this sort of thing that was going on? And I feel that it can manifest in a bunch of different ways. But I remember, I can't believe I'm about to say this, but I remember being little, like 5 or 6 years old, and I refused to get whatever they were giving us at school. I was like, I don't want to go and, get the Hep B or whatever it was that we had to get. And so I refused at school. And so my mom had to take me to my doctor. And I remember being in the doctor's office and literally screaming at the top of my lungs long enough. And I mean, long enough for the doctor to completely give up. She was like, "I just absolutely won't do it," because I was just in that state of like, this is an absolute no for me. Yeah. And they were trying to hold me down and do all these things. And I was like, this is a no. Like, this is such a hard no. And I don't even really remember what happened other than the doctor hitting her level of frustration and being like, I'm just not going to do this. Like, this is absolutely impossible to do with this
But to
person.
see a child's reaction at that level, it's traumatizing. So if they would have continued on, it would have traumatized you even more than what your fear or past memory has already
Mhm.
done. There was a
Mhm.
connection there. So interesting.
Yeah. Very interesting. I
Yeah.
don't necessarily, have conclusions with it, but I have instincts or, there's things with that. But I have also, like, as a healer and healing other people, I have experienced their ailments in my own body as things are coming out. I think that's sometimes a very common thing. But one of the things that I have learned in that vein is that it happens to me when I have a match. When whatever it is that's coming through the person that I'm healing has a match to an experience that I had lived through or that I had gone through. So it's not actually that I'm receiving their stuff. It's actually that their stuff is highlighting within me that I can then also release what needs to come through simultaneously. And that's what I've experienced with even with empathizing. Like, I used to be a lot more, I had this habit of, like, let's say, bringing younger women under my wing sort of thing, and like really kind of mama bearing and taking care of them and almost being an emotional caregiver, because I realized that I wanted that support when I was at that stage and I didn't have it. So for me to be in that role with them was me reconciling those experiences or those desires that weren't fulfilled for me. And the more that I healed that part of myself, the less I do that. And I'm like, oh no, like, she's got it. It doesn't have to be that. But I was empathizing because I needed that healing. And so to go back to the empath thing, the empath, like, receiving and all of this stuff, empaths go through trauma. I've never met an empath that didn't go through trauma. And when I see people that, like, maybe their parents fought a little bit, or, but they pretty much had a pretty simple, let's say, childhood or whatever, they don't have that same sort of resilience, but they also don't have that same sort of, let's say, neuroses. if the resilience hasn't been integrated, then it shows up as neuroses and other things. But that empathizing comes from the unhealed wounds in the healer. It comes from the unhealed parts within the healer or within us that wants that reconciliation, or that wants that support that we're giving, or that wants to be seen in the way that we are seeing somebody else, because other people don't see us in that same way. And so that part, like that whole kit and caboodle, when we talk about the empaths and the empathizing, all comes back to how do we integrate and how do we bring ourselves into a state of wholeness that is going to be beneficial for our life journey at the core. And when it's beneficial to our life journey at the core, then that ripple effect happens. We're stronger with compassion. We're stronger with the embodiment of forgiveness. All the other things, like, build up and off of that.
Okay, so I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel we have to understand our past life journeys to move forward from
No,
our headspace?
no, I don't.
Because what
I
we
don't.
remember will appear if needed, or
Yes.
okay.
Yes. And I don't believe that all past lives are associated to us specifically. And one of the things that I've noticed, that because I believe in imprinting, in the same way that I'll say, I had a friend that had this experience and I was able to learn from it. I do believe that we are able to come into this body with kind of like a docket of information where we were able to imprint from other people's lives that help us through this life. These are my roommates. Aren't they cute? But they help us through this life. And so I don't necessarily trust or fully believe that all information that comes up as past lives or visions is attributable to the person, even if I am reading them. Now, I will say, if there is a visceral, like you're saying, the water coming out of the lungs, or you're having a reaction and it's coming out of your physical body, if that's taking place, then the likelihood of it being an actual soul memory rather than an imprint, I would say, is much higher and a little bit more trustworthy. Now, the other part to that I've seen that I think is like the shadow side of exploring past lives is kind of like the gateway to going into Lemuria and dragon codes and like all these other things, right? It's like, oh, past lives, that's a little bit attainable. Maybe I believe in reincarnation. Okay, then you have a couple past life experiences and you're like, okay, there's something to this. Like, I've now experienced it firsthand. So I think there's benefit to it. What I have seen mess with people is the egoic attachment and getting stuck in the loop of what happened in the past life. That's where I see that becoming a problem and actually a hindrance on the path of growth that doesn't serve. So there's a curiosity, but then there's people that were like, well, I was a king in this lifetime. And I'm like, well, you got some work to do in this body.
Or I would
you got some stuff going on.
Or yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing is like, I really believe that we all have the codes of all of them. We all have the codes of slavery. We all have the codes of peasantry. We all have the codes of the middle class. We all have the codes of royalty. We all have the codes of even being leaders. We all have the codes of being followers. We have all of the codes inside of all of us. And that's where I could say that we are all one. Because I do believe that our soul has access to experiencing all of these perspectives in the same way that, like, if we are to watch a movie, we get to experience what it's like to be in the shoes of the main character. We get to learn from what that experience is, or we relate to that experience, or there's a takeaway of evolving our own experience without having to have that direct experience ourselves. But we're able to speed the process up. So when I was at the beginning of my journey and learning to do, and I was doing a lot of individual one-on-one readings, I was reading a lot of past lives. Like I said, it's the gateway. So for me being at the beginning, a lot of people want to read their past lives. So I'm like, good, let's go for it. And there was a lot of beneficial information that came out for me that also fortified the belief in what I was seeing to be real. And so when I would read past lives that were very clear and that they would show up like memories that I had in this life. And so if they would show up like memories, and so I could, it's like memories are fallible. So maybe past lives are fallible, but I'm having these visceral experiences and my body's changing and I'm having a parasympathetic, like physiological experience. And if I'm having those, okay, so that's concrete. I can believe that. I understand this. This is making sense. This is why there's a power dynamic between this person that I just met, because there's some unresolved loop from a past life. I had those experiences as well. And then I started having Atlantean memories. And then I'm going, okay, if I'm having Atlantean memories that are showing up in the same way that these other past lives are, then there's validity to this. And then Atlantis was real. And then I can actually start to remember the magical information that I embodied in the Atlantean lifetime into this lifetime, that then teaches me from a soul level how to basically integrate the work that I'd already done. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I do believe there's a beneficial component to remembering our past lives, which I believe is happening simultaneously. If what's going on this planet, and if time doesn't only exist in the linear form, then we can actually integrate the information from those timelines or lifetimes or experiences. And that's where, like, I don't like to get caught up in the vocabulary or the semantics. And it really comes down to the sensation of what do you feel in your heart? And if what you feel in your heart is activating these memories of being in Atlantis, then you are actually embodying the genetic codes of those experiences that activate a different level of intelligence, that activate a different level of knowing, that activate a different level of the psychic abilities coming through because they've already been fortified in other lifetimes. And that is where and why I believe that certain people or certain beings come into this world, onto this planet, having a different set of information and higher levels of consciousness than others. And why certain babies are born in certain places rather than others, because they're already operating at a certain level of consciousness, because through their life experiences embodied as human beings, they've been able to integrate and grow through different fields of consciousness so that the experience of awakening happens younger, and the experience of those memories activating happens younger. Like for me, I had them as a child. I knew it, but I didn't know how to embody it. And I still had the emotional intelligence of an 8-year-old. I still had the emotional experiences of a Westerner American girl that had family dysfunction and this sort of stuff. So it's like that consciousness can come through, but the consciousness is also only as good as the integrated emotional intelligence of the physiological body. The biological chemistry also has to be nurtured. And that's where I do believe that we are bringing our physical bodies with us into the frequency of 5D or the new earth or the assimilation into the next field. But that's what upgrades our DNA. And we upgrade our DNA every time we integrate a past experience that has created a loop that's magnetizing or manifesting, let's say, bad experiences or shadow experiences in this lifetime. Now, when we activate the DNA, we stop tripping on that wire and we actually get to accelerate into a new field of awareness and people and community and conversations that shift things.
Do you think as we move forward that we're going to get rid of the reaction of good or bad and just see everything as is? There is no,
Yes, but I don't think.
Like, are we going to see that in our lifetime?
No. And I'm saying no. I want to be clear on what you're asking or what I'm hearing you say. I don't believe, and I haven't since I was younger, that every single human being, every soul that's on this planet is going to make the shift. And for sure is not going to make the shift in our lifetime.
That's fair.
Yeah. And so and right now what I'm seeing is like there's the light and then there's the dark. And I've seen this for a while. As the light gets brighter, the dark gets darker. As the illumination of conscious evolution continues to build, the fear and dark and chaotic and like attack energy also is kind of having these like last ditch effort sort of thing before integration occurs. And so a mass majority of the population is actually sitting in the middle ground, trying to figure out where they sit or where they stay, or if they're waking up or if they're not waking up, or if they're still in the programming or if they're this or that. So right now, with, let's say we're coming to the end of the pandemic, or let's say we're coming to the end of the grip that, let's say, the sickness has, like how many more rounds can this go? Because it's kind of apparent that it's getting weaker, not stronger. So if that's taking place, then we know that there's the reconciliation of the emotional or psychological trauma, but also the support that is helping the people who have woken up during this time to be able to start that journey. And I've consciously been on it for over 10 years now because I had to reconcile the pain that happened for me in childhood and early adolescence. And so that space of being fed up is an extremely powerful place. And I think a lot of people are really hitting that now. And so there are more and more people, and the more and more people that are embodying light, the more and more accessible it is to more and more people. Mm-hmm. And so those that are shifting into that field and those that are shifting into that awareness are, we call it the leading edge of consciousness. They are the people who are natural born healers, natural born teachers, natural born speakers, natural born writers that are helping to bring people into that. And here's the thing. There's no uniform. These people don't have to look like what you think they need to look like or act like. And if they are looking like it or acting like it, follow your own intuition.
Mhm.
Because it's not a part we play.
Mm-mm. Not the ones that lead from their heart, no.
Not the ones that are leading from their own space of integrity and genuine authenticity of knowing who they are. And the people that genuinely know who they are don't all look the same.
Mhm.
And don't all act the same. And don't all talk the same.
Yeah, exactly.
But what I can say is that one indicator of it is that you feel free and comfortable in their company. You feel free and open in their company. There isn't judgment. There isn't, you have to act in a certain way. You don't have to do X amount of whatever, mantras or whatever it is. It's that people that have embodied their higher self, people that have embodied the consciousness of their true being, offer that liberation to others just simply by being in the same room with them. And that's the way that you can tell that there's an authenticity and a freedom that offers a genuine expression of whatever needs to come through in that moment, in that time, that just simply feels natural. And I think that's the best indicator and best piece of discernment of knowing who is a part of, let's say, who's doing their work, but who's very present with themselves and remembering the core of their true being, remembering the core of their true essence. And through that, the level of self-acceptance and self-forgiveness and self-compassion that a person has to embody to get there to be free in their own skin and liberated in their own skin, that's what offers the ripple effect to those that are around them going, oh, I can feel free. I can just be myself. It feels very lovely and natural and fun. Thank you. And the conversation doesn't always have to be about like what we're talking about here. It can be about anything.
It doesn't have to be conversation. It could just be you're
True.
in the space together.
Mm-hmm. It could be that you're in a yoga class together and not even having a conversation.
Exactly.
But you feel it. You feel it. It's a sensation. It's not a conversation.
No, it's not with words by no means.
Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah. I'm starting to feel a bit complete. Is there anything else that you wanted to
No, I
touch
think
in on?
we really covered a vast. Be good.
We really did. We really did. Can I ask, this is kind of funny, but can I ask for just a shameless plug or what your experience has been with the Metaphysical Club? And I do want to say, I want to share this a little bit, is I want to just talk a little bit about my personal relationship with you. Is that okay?
Go ahead.
So I was connected to Robyn because Robyn found me on the internet, as people often do. And I remember our first conversation almost like it was yesterday. And I remembered hearing your voice, and there was something about your voice that just brought so much peace and serenity to my own heart and to my own soul. And, even though it was, we'll call it quote unquote, a sales call when I was really deep in the paint of the digital marketing before going through my several years of detoxification of that whole world. It's been very interesting. But there was something that was so unique and so powerful. And as I say, the detoxification of that whole world, my life took a massive, unexpected, yet predicted turn to get me to Bali. And through that, my life really fell apart. Everything that I had thought that I'd built and worked so hard for literally was just like ripped from my hands, from my finances to my loft apartment, my dog, the partner that I was seeing, the trajectory that I thought I was on. Literally everything like was disseminated. And through that, it was a really, really, really hard period for me. And simultaneously, it was a really hard period for me to hold a container for people that I was leading as my own, like, we'll say students or clients. And I don't even like using those words when I talk about you, the core that came through that period with me and sent me some of the most timely and beautiful messages when my heart was just falling apart. Or let's say the shells of my heart were falling apart. My heart was breaking in the most excruciating yet ultimately beautiful ways. And so that being said, I know that the experience wasn't perfect in the form of structure of what you would want a course or class to be, yet I also just want to say how unbelievably grateful I have been to each and every single message I have ever gotten from you. And this, like, the relationship and the dynamic that we have goes so far beyond what is business and what is classes and what is this and what is that. Like, there's absolutely no doubt in my heart that we're here to experience this soul journey. And it's not a soul contract. It's not that you owe me anything or I owe you. It's that we're experiencing this life journey and this mass awakening in unison, to walk side by side. And like, you know, are you good? You staying hydrated? Taking care? Like, whatever we can do to remind each other of that. And I genuinely wanted to say thank you, and thank you for being open to this conversation and recording it with the intention to share with others today.
I have expressed to you from the beginning that you assisted in changing my life. I was guided to you, and so much shifted. The Intuitive Connection Academy was the stepping stone. Your videos, there's just so much raw emotion behind the work you did because of what you experienced growing up that literally cracked me open to step into who I'm becoming. So, and as you were going through some of your hardest challenges, and let's call them challenges, the group that the space you were holding in the meta group were able to nurture you back because of the love and the nurturing you gave us. So that is a community that you want to be part of, you know, because you don't have to be on point every single moment, you know, because of the group you pulled together that gathered around to learn, to grow, and to nurture. You nurtured, we nurtured. That's what it's about. So, yeah, there was no Sitara. I know you've questioned so many times, did I drop the ball because I didn't do this, this, and this? No. It's perfect the way it is because it is the way it is. And as long as we can hold that frequency, it's perfect the way it is, no matter how it is. We're together. That's perfection. And we're always learning from each other. I love you.
I love you. Love you so much, and thank you so much for just showing up in my world and life, and letting me in, giving me the opportunity to participate in your life with you in the way that we have been able to. And I mean, like I shared with you before we started recording, it really feels like this is even just barely the beginning. We've already been doing it for a few years. It still feels like it's just barely the beginning.
Absolutely.
There's so much more. There's so much more, and I'm starting to feel it, and I'm really feeling ready. And I don't feel I haven't thought about this, but I don't think that I would feel as ready had we not had those experiences of going through the ups and downs of what the last few years with those programs have been, of knowing that no matter how bad it gets, no matter how hard the ball hits the floor, no matter how hard, like whatever it is, it's, I mean, my motto has always just been, just keep showing up, just keep showing up,
You
just
did.
keep showing up, just keep showing up.
Okay.
Like I will show up and I will maybe be a mess that day, but I'm like, we're showing up, we're going. It's like that resilience. It's not ever something that I had to learn. I just knew that showing up with an earnesty rather than backing out and hiding with a flakiness, which I did with YouTube, because I couldn't handle strangers sending me messages being like, I can see it in your eyes, what's going on. It got to me, that got to be too much of an open window that I wasn't willing to participate in. But within the community where there was a safe place for my broken heart to be seen and nurtured and loved and appreciated, I do think it fortified a different bond between us as human beings. And simultaneously, I think it's also what confirmed to me that we're here, we're in this, like we're in this together, we're sorting things out together, and we're traversing, like you've said, like we've never experienced these frequencies on the planet before, but we know that we're here for this. And we know that within ourselves, we have all the information, all the encoding, all the understanding of what we're meant to do every single step of the way, our future self, our higher self guiding us at every moment. And knowing that, like, we can't do it alone, nor do we want to. It's a little bit terrifying. We don't want to do it all alone. So yes, just thank you. And with that, I don't even really want to talk about Cosmic Bloom and the way that I was thinking about it. I can just say that, like, go check out the website at monadsociety.com, or you can type in monadsociety.com/Cosmic Bloom 11. You can also find it in the link tree on Instagram or in the description below this YouTube video. If you're listening to it on a podcast, find me. You will know, the intuition will be so strong that you will know that you will find the link. Yes. I know this.
Just and
I know that the time will be right. Yes, exactly. Yes. And so with that, I had some light codes coming through at so many different points of this conversation. And so I actually don't feel called to share the light codes, but what I would like to do is just simply share almost like a shavasana. We could just take a few seconds, maybe 20 to 30 seconds of just being in silence and feeling the space, feeling the energy of what has moved through for all of us. Mm-hmm.
I love you.
Oh, I love you too, Robyn.
I bless you. I see you. I thank you.
I receive, I receive, I receive. Thank you so much, my love. Robyn, it's been such a blessed experience to tune in this way with you. And so we'll go ahead and say thank you also for those of you who have listened. And yeah, please feel free to stay tuned. And when the time feels right, please investigate Cosmic Bloom and reach out and ask any questions that you may have. And I think with that, we can say, as we go forth, may we integrate the healing and the lessons received with courage, self-love, and compassion. our connection here today is very much in love, very much held in gratitude and compassion, and very much complete.
Beautiful.